Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It's your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing a watch launched at Baselworld 2013 from Arnold & Son. This is the DBG, a true dual-time watch with an extraordinary degree of flexibility. It has two time zones that can be set to the minute for any idiosyncratic time zone. The watch, in terms of size in stainless steel, is substantial. 44 millimeters, though thin, at 10.1 millimeters thick. The watch is 49.5 millimeters from lug to lug and has a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Broad and flat describes this watch. I should also say that it's not too broad across the wrist. It's more of a broad case with the lugs relatively short and tightly curled. It wears well on a smaller wrist. I normally don't recommend a 44 millimeter watch for a 14 centimeter circumference wrist, but even if your wrist is that size, you can still wear this one well. You can also see how it will fit underneath the cuff, so it's also a great option as a dress watch. Taking a quick look at the hardware and the software, the strap is a dark brown, semi-gloss, large rectangular scale alligator leather. It has a monotone stitch and a folded edge. On the underside, you can see it's calfskin, and it is a brand new Arnold & Son factory strap. The buckle is a handsome piece, anything but generic. It reminds you who made it, and it looks unlike any other. You'll also note there's some design parallelism as the teardrop profile of the buckle matches the teardrop profile of the case. Now, taking a quick look at the case, it's a fascinating and nuanced piece. The sharp break between the lugs and the case band is pretty impressive from a fabrication standpoint. It's all of high polish, and as you can see, it's sort of an inverted tier. As the bezel is broadest, then the mid-case, then it steps back again before it reaches the case back, which is most recessed from the flank. And that's all for good reason. It makes the watch look thinner on the wrist. Everything's of high polish. You've got the Arnold & Son logo on the crown, and we've got two crowns. A quick note about this watch. It is not a resonance timepiece, so while you might at first glance recognize some similarities with, for example, the Armstrong Mirrored Force or the FP Journe Chronomètre à Résonance, this is explicitly just a very accurate twin movement dual time watch. There's a lot to love here. As you can see, there are several different finishes on the dial, including satination on the balance cocks, Côte de Genève beneath them. You can see that there is polishing on the bridges between. You can see the root of each balance cock, and then there's a lovely frosting for the dial itself with opaline or matte silver for the individual dials. You can see that these two dials, though set to the same time, are actually set 12 hours apart from each other. So you can actually set them independently, and I'll demonstrate how this works. You can set them to the minute. So there are some weird time zones in this world, some of which are off by only 15 minutes, some of which are completely physically encompassed by different time zones. So the ability to set that second zone to the minute and be truly different means that no matter what North Korea or Caracas, Venezuela decide to do, you will always be able to adapt. So this is a real dual time watch. It doesn't just have a stepping hour hand. You'll also note that the skeletonized hands of the Roman numeral dial correspond to a skeletonized hand on the 24-hour dial, and that the solid hands on the Arabic numeral correspond to a solid hand on the 24-hour dial. So unlike just about every other dual time zone watch, you get an AM/PM indicator or a day-night indicator for both of the displays, not just for the remote one, the reference. It's a nicely finished watch. As you can see, there are blued screws, the real fired blue kind, not those sickly dyed blued screws. And not only do we have a handsome frosting finish on those roots of the balance cocks, you can see that there is mirrored polish on the edge, and this is real beveling. This is not something that was done crudely with a machining wheel. While it was probably started mechanically, it was obviously finished manually, and I applaud Arnold & Son for that. You can also see that there's engine turning on the base plate below the balances. Turn it all over, and while it does structurally resemble the first generation FP Journe Resonance, especially with the two visible rat wheels up at the top, it is its own watch. So you have lovely striated and narrow Cote de Genève, a vertical treatment that looks fantastic. As most Geneva waves are big and broad, these are tight. They also give the movement a pronounced vertical orientation. Note the triple solarization of the ratchet wheels. That's difficult to do and distinctly high horology. You'll also note there are many blued screws on this caseback, and every edge is mirrored, which is quite impressive. The timepiece is good looking on both sides, pivots on 42 jewels. It has, for each of its independent movements, and I should mention that you wind both of them with the crown at 3 o'clock, although you set with the two crowns separately. Both are wound through the 3 o'clock crown. So for both of these movements, it has an independent power reserve of 40 hours. So you're going to want to wind it daily. These balances beat away at 21,600 vibrations per hour. Everything is adjusted 5 times, so 5 positions, which is the chronometer and high horology standard, and I applaud that. The 42 jewel movement in this case is water resistant down to 30 meters, so it's not an aquatic or sporting watch, though it is fairly sporty for a dress watch. Consider it sports casual. This is the Arnold & Son DBG.